discuss this issue, and we will try to tackle this issue from different angles and aspects. Calling the events that happened in 1915 as a genocide of the Armenians by the American President Biden created a lot of harsh argument amongst the Turks and internationally. The Turks have shown a strong reaction to this labeling by the American president, while the Armenians liked that and celebrated that. These events happened 1 century ago, and they should be taken into they should be looked at within the historic context, and we need and this event needed to be explored by experts and historians, not by unbiased people. As you know, in the research, the Armenians perpetrated massacres against the Turks in the period before the World War I, during the war, and after the war. And that's what has been registered in the documents, archives, international delegations, and the eyewitnesses in the period. However, these reports, fortunately, are becoming very scarce as the voices that reject calling what happened as a genocide because of because of the massacres perpetrated by the Armenians. The Armenians in that period were deported in a time where the Arabs, Armenians, Turks, Kurds were living in the same area. They were living together without any differences amongst each other under the Ottoman Empire. In this deportation, some people, some of them were under harsh environmental problems, and some of them lost their lives. Starting from here, they accused the Ottoman Empire of perpetrating genocide without any grounds. In the academic circles and in the think tanks, especially historians, it is their responsibility to reveal the real events that happened in that period. What happened in that period cannot be revealed without conducting scientific research. And unfortunately, the politicians are under the pressure of different lobbies. The Armenians rushed to claim and use all the propaganda means to promote their narrative in order so they don't allow the other party be heard. Starting from this reality, ORSAM Center conducted this webinar on the internet to show the audience the opinions of experts. This webinar aims at showing the different perspectives of this issue from the angles of experts. So we called 4 different experts from different countries to talk about that. So the panelists will try to explain the context and the deportation event objectively, away from the political considerations in light of the scientific research they conducted. Before we start with the webinar, I would like to give a statement by the speakers. We have Mr. Ahmed, the head of the ORSAM Center. I will give him the floor to start with the welcoming remarks. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anwar. We are happy to have all of these guests and speakers and all the valuable scholars to comment on what really happened in the Anatolia and with Armenia. We I mean, there are two major things. I mean, America is not a country to decide who was right and who was wrong in history, and they are generally American policies. They are on the wrong side of history, also in many cases, in very often. And what they did in Afghanistan or in Iraq, caused huge suffering and a lot of killings. And even Madeleine Albright, the former foreign minister, or they call it foreign secretary, when they asked about, half a million Iraqi children died because of your sanctions. And they asked, is it worth it? She said, it was, in our calculation, it was worth it. So, and they did not gain anything. They are now getting out of Iraq and Afghanistan, and they did not defeat Al Qaeda, or they couldn't find, weapons of mass destruction. So America is not in a position to determine who is right and who is wrong. And after like 100 years, the problem is, they were the one, especially with the United Kingdom as the big naval empire. They were the one who caused these sufferings. They provoked Armenians, and they after they controlled, or they invaded Egypt, actually. That is the book by Mustafa Kamil. Maybe the scholars will talk about it. Mes'ele Sharqiya, the Eastern question. And the East, after the collapse of Ottoman Empire, it became the Middle East. So we are suffering from their designs and their interventions after 100 years, and they are blaming the victim. This Mustafa Kamil, the Batal al-Qawmi al-Masri, an Egyptian national hero, he said, he warned, like just 10 years before the First World War, he warned Armenians that you lived together for 1,000 years. Don't believe in these Western, provokers, and they are going to use you. And he said, you're going to suffer dearly if you want to try to expel Turks from the Anatolia. And this was part of the history, but the main scheme was that they want to expel Turks, or to send Turks back all the way to Central Asia. They used first Armenians, then this failed, but it caused a lot of suffering in both sides. Then they used Greeks to invade Anatolia and some other colonizers, but they failed again. And today they want to use the same logic to expel Turkey from the Eastern Mediterranean, and this time they want to imprison Turkey to the Anatolia only. So there is these actions never stops, and we know they divided the Arab world into very small pieces, and they are not in a position to tell anybody who was right and who was wrong. And of course, Turkey suggested to open an independent scientific committee to figure out, to see the Russian archives, Ottoman archives, even the Armenian archives. They have some, also they documented how many they killed from the Turks and Kurds and other Muslims, and they don't want to reveal it. They said this is done and we won, and they want to build on it, but I think this is too late. Just last note, I was in Karabakh just 10 days ago, just the beginning of Ramadan. I saw the destruction and the disrespect of Armenians in Karabakh to the Muslim population, to the masajid, to the mosque. They destroyed all of the mosques. They remained only one mosque in Agdam region, and they also feed the pigs over there and animals inside the masjid, inside the mosque. So their disrespect and the hatred they have, they did not even have population, people to settle in these areas. So, but despite that, they destroyed these, and they also dug the graves of Muslims to get maybe like a golden teeth or something. They dug all the graves, very irrespectful of the deceased. In all religions, in all cultures, there is somehow respect to the dead people, but they don't even respect it. So this Biden decision, I think, is, I think, backfiring, and many people question the what the Americans did to the world, especially to the East. And of course, as ORSAM, we are after the truth, the real nature of the conflicts, and we will hear from our Arab and Turkish scholars. They are also very familiar with the topic, even though we don't as the scholar, we don't sociologist. I don't know the details, but I know the general colonizing policies to use the minorities against majorities. I summarize with conclude with Jamal Khashoggi's word in this respect. He said, may Allah bless his soul. He said, the West has obsession with the minorities in the region, in the Middle East, but they always overlook the rights of majorities. And we know, he said, the majority is suffering more than also as much as so. Just using the minority and some groups against each other is not going to solve, and bringing this issue after more than 100 years also will not help any injustice. We need more, historical truths, but we expect our scholars also to shed a good light on it. I am not an expert on Armenian history and also Ottoman history, but we know the general scheme, and we want to also learn from the historians and scholars about what really happened in the region. And again, I thank all of the speakers and also listeners, viewers around the world in the Corona time, and welcome you back. Thank you very much, Dr. Anwar.
Thank you very much. شكرا جزيلا أستاذ الدكتور أحمد ويصال.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad Oysal, the head of ORSAM. Thank you for this opening remark. Now we have 4 scholars. Each one of them is from a different country. Each one of them will present his ideas about this issue. We have Mr. Ahmad Abdel Wahab al-Sharqawi from Misr, from Egypt, and he is the head of the Asian Cultural Center, and he has several researches and books about this issue. He has a book called The Armenians in the Britain Archives. He wrote this book with Dr. Khalid Al-Jundi. Khalid Al-Jundi is a professor. I am the head of the history department in the American University in Beirut. And that is the book I'm showing to you. The other book is the Armenian massacres against the Turks in the Ottoman documents and the regional documents. So in the Russian, American, and the Ottoman documents, and he has several other researchers in this field. And this book is considered an authoritative book from a different angle, showing a panoramic view of the Armenian Turkish landscape in this regard. I will start with Professor Ahmad Sharqawi. Professor Sharqawi, before we come to the events that are allegedly called the genocide in 1913, what was the position of the Ottoman state towards the Armenians? What was the position of the Armenians within the Ottoman Empire? If you can give us a contextual explanation of that. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, and the blessings and the mercy be upon his prophet. The Armenians is one of the minorities that lived under the Ottoman Empire since its establishment and before it became an empire, and way before opening the uh, Constantinople. The Armenians were amongst the minorities living in under the Ottoman Empire. These long centuries of peaceful coexistence amongst all of these ethnic groups, let me remind you that the TNT barrel that was that erupted between the World War I and World War II in the Balkan area. There was only one state that was called the Rommel province. So all of these groups that, or that area that turned into 10 states, they were all living under the Ottoman Empire, which were all living freely under the milliyet law, giving them a freedom to exercise their religion and their culture. And even there are several sects in Europe preferred to live under the Ottomans rather than living under the feudal people who use them just like the animals they have in their lands. So the Ottomans, with their religious view, as long as they were following the true path of Islam, they contained those peoples. And when they conquered the Constantinople, that the entire Islamic world a center, a very important center. They said, we see in Constantinople the turbans of the Turks and not the crosses of the cardinals. So when the Ottoman Empire neglected or abandoned some of the Islamic values that they were governed by, allow me here to say this abandonment was imposed by foreign powers after the Crimea War and the Nicaea agreement, in which the Ottoman Sultan himself, in one of the provisions of this agreement, gave European countries the constitutional right to maintain this religious minorities and monitor the treatment of the minorities, on top of which the Armenians. Why am I saying on top of which the Armenians? Because the Armenians were a first-class minority. They were even better than the Jews, who had the capital and who were businessmen. So this the truthful nation to the Ottoman and to the region around them. They were called as such, and even we hear that there were 22 ministers or wazirs, Armenians, to the Ottoman. Even the deputy of the Grand Port was also Armenian. He is the deputy of the ruler of the entire empire. So the Armenians were not second class or third class as they were living in Russia, for example. They were first class citizens. But when their ambitions started to incline to be inclined with the West, and the nationalistic ideas started to affect them after the French Revolution. In addition to internal problems, the problems with the Armenians started to appear. But these problems started in 1856 when the Ottoman Empire received a document from the Sultan providing power to the Europeans to monitor the treatment of the Armenians and the minorities. At that point, the Armenians made a U-turn because they were supported from outside Turkey. And here there was a dangerous role of religious clerics. And here I'm talking about the cardinals and the priests. For the first time, Constantinople or Istanbul became a warehouse of weapons. And for the first time, there was a priest, Gregorius maybe, or called something like that. He was executed, and another patriarch informed about him or reported him because he found a message from that patriarch to the Russian Caesar, calling him or telling him how to topple the Ottoman rule by deconstructing the Ottoman Empire and the Ottoman society. These documents are still there and they are documented. We're not talking from thin air. So the Armenians started to have activity. They stopped paying taxes, like the Armenians of Zaytun and others. And other Armenians in other areas started to attack the Ottoman military barracks. The new citizenship that they asked, they were supposed to be part of the Ottoman army and to be conscripted. Not like the past, but they refused to be conscripted. All of these events lead to being in treachery to their empire, to their homeland. So all of that created negative sentiment amongst their fellow citizens, whether Turks, Arabs, or Kurds, or any other ethnicity within the Ottomans. But the most important problem was the links between the Armenians and the foreign powers, not only their bonds with them through trade, but also in terms of education, journalism, and education, and most of which the links through weaponizing and inciting them to revolt. So the tension accumulated gradually before we reach the climax in 1915 and 1916. The Armenian gangs started to kill Armenians. These are documented events in the Armenian documents and archives. I'm not talking about any Ottoman archives now, but I am using the evidence that is coming from the other side. There is an Armenian researcher, it's called Louisa Nalmeidian. She was living in the United States and she was killed in a car accident. I'm not accusing anyone here on her death. Her PhD thesis, which was published, it was about the Armenian revolutionary organizations in the 19th century. She was lucky because she met with the leaders of those organizations who participated in World War I, and they spoke with her or to her as if they were writing autobiography for them. So they were bragging about all the heroic acts they made against the Ottoman Empire in their revolution. So that led them admitting a lot of crimes they perpetrated that were capital treachery to their state. Until now, the Armenians depend on those testimonies and they consider them heroic acts. There is an Armenian whose book was translated to Arabic and it's called Documents About the Armenian Massacres. The author was an Ottoman officer, graduated from the war academies, Ottoman war academies. In his autobiography, he says that he joined the fight against the Ottoman caliphs. But how is that? You are an Ottoman you are an Ottoman citizen, at least, if not Ottoman officer, and that after the so he was volunteering with the alliance, and he allowed them to get into the archives in Istanbul. So they were looking for documents that incriminate the Ottoman Empire for the massacres against the Armenians, but they couldn't find any a single document, and this issue was known as the expelled to Malta. They couldn't find a single piece of evidence. Thank you, Dr. Ahmad. I will come back to you. We have now Professor Cengiz Tomak. He is Turks, and he is the head of Ahmad Yusawi, the international organization in Uzbekistan, in Turkestan, sorry. Mr. Cengiz has a lot of research in this topic, and he knows the regions of Turkey. So I ask you now, Dr. Cengiz, in which areas did the Armenians in the east of Anatolia harassed the Arabs and the Kurds, where the number of the Muslims who were killed due to those harassments? Why am I asking you this question? Because we know, and there are eyewitnesses, even my grandfather himself always told us that the Armenians killed so many people in the east of Turkey. So please, Dr. Cengiz, if you may tell us about those incidents that took place by the Armenians in the cities of east of Turkey. The floor is yours. Peace be upon you. In the name of God, in the beginning, I would like to welcome all of you and the audience and the dear panelists and scholars. Thank you for this invitation. Thank you for ORSAM and for hosting this webinar. The Armenian issue, as Professor Sharqawi said, started before, way before World War I, especially in the last years of the 19th century, especially in around the year 1890, especially with the massacres perpetrated by Armenians against Muslims, not only Muslims, Turks, Jews, and the Greek Christians as well, not only the Muslims and Turks in the eastern areas, that the Armenians claim that this is their own state or territory. These crimes started from 1905 to 1920. What I'm talking about here is based on documented evidence. We're talking about documents from the Ottoman archives and other books that documented these events. So I'm not here using any ideology or propaganda or about politics, just as it is used by European countries, the Armenians, or the United States now. So this is not a historic issue. It's became a political issue to put pressure on Turkey, and the Armenian diaspora in the United States are lobbying for this issue because they have a lot of interest for their faith to be, which is different in the United States from their minority here. These crimes started in the Caucasia by the Armenians against the Turks and the Kurds. In terms of Justin McCarthy, you all know this American professor, and he has several books written
الأرشيف العثماني
about the Armenians, and he studied the Ottoman archives, and everything is documented. So he says that in terms of the six provinces, these six provinces, maybe people don't know which provinces we are talking about. They are the eastern provinces: Arzerum, Al-Aziz, Al-Azraq, Siwas, Diyarbakir, Wabitis. نحن نسميها we call them the six Ottoman provinces. In these provinces, the Armenians claimed that these provinces belong to them, to the Armenians. In the beginning of the 20th century,
19% يعني بالنسبة
the Armenians made about 19% of the population in these provinces. 80% of the population were Muslims, and 1% of the other sects and ethnicities.
الدولة أو الدويلة أو الولايات الستة لهم. طبعا بالنسبة لي يعني كيف
So they claim that this place is part of the Armenian state. How can you claim that if you are having a population of 20% in a certain city, you can claim that this is your state? You can't. So they started to kill the Muslims and other minorities, especially in 1905, 1906. The problems between the Muslims and the Armenians started to erupt, especially in 1914. The Armenian gangs killed a lot of Turks in this area. For example, in 1915,
والي مدينة وان
the ruler of Iwan province, he was attacked by the Russians, and he says in his book, or he was appointed by the Russians, he says that the Russian commander sent the emir an order for this ruler to kill the Kurds in this area. This is documented by the Russians. And in terms of the Ottoman archives, there are about 10 or 12 years between 1910 and 1922, more than 500,000 people of the Turks were killed by the Armenians. This is also documented. So who should be claiming that there is a massacre or a genocide? We know the figures in terms of all the World War I. The casualties accumulated to 350,000 in the entire war.
قتلوا أو ماتوا بسبب.
In terms of the Armenians, there were 60,000 Armenians were killed because of the deportation and because of the diseases and the difficulties they faced on the en route of their displacement. So these are the figures that we have from our archives. As the French foreign minister said once, he was a minister at that period. So he mentions in a document that we have now, in the city of Marwan, 6,000 Muslims were killed by the Armenians. This is also documented. In 1915, in 19 August, the ambassador of Austria wrote about the crimes of Armenians against the Turks in these areas. This is also a document that is available in the eastern Turkish provinces. In 1916, also, the Russian armies in Erzurum, Arzijan, and in other cities in that period.
17
And in 1917 as well, a lot of Turks were killed by the Armenians in Azinjan province. This is also documented. The figures are as high as 800 Turks killed. And here we're talking about civilians, not about armed forces or military. And in Erzurum as well, in the same year,
وأيضا في قرية أو بلدة
there were also crimes by the Armenians, and there is also there are crimes in other provinces, and the mass graves are still present, and there is also Padakoi. All the villages were killed by the Armenians, and in 1918, so many Muslims were killed in that village. In 1918 as well, in Erzurum, in Alajam, and all the Turkish markets in Erzurum were destroyed by the Armenian gangs. All of these are documented, and documents are available. We have seen them. In February, on the 26th and 27th of February 1918, in Erzurum alone, 3,000 Turkish citizens, and among all Muslims, there were about 8,000 of all Muslims were killed by the Armenians. The Russian commander Tverdorov speaks about his memories, or mentions in his memories that in all of the villages of Erzurum, so many Turks were killed.
هيئة سنة 1918 في أولوهانlı, في Kaberli, في Derelyes.
At the end of 1918 in Ohanli, Kederlias, in these eastern villages also there were Turks and Muslims killed.
يعني تقريبا في يعني
So we can say, when we speak only about those six provinces, Diyarbakir, Siwas, Erzurum, and other provinces, in these six provinces, all villages, Muslims and Turks were expelled, killed, and deported by the Armenian gangs. And all of these facts are mentioned in the books of the American author Martin McCarthy. Albert Robertson, the British commander, sent a telegram to Istanbul saying even in Erzurum, so many Turkish and Muslim villages were destroyed by the Armenian gangs. And so many Turks were killed in these areas. In the Caucasia as well, 600 Muslims and Turks were killed, and their mass graves are also identified for us. Melik Shah Nazarov, an Armenian commander, he attacked 30 Turkish villages, and all the Muslims in these 30 villages were killed. They were terminated. So we don't know the exact figure of the people that were killed there. Another Armenian commander in 1920, in Pazar Gajarda, a village called that name. Not only Turks were killed there, but all people residing in that area, Muslims and non-Muslims, were killed. In Qas city also in 1920, and Sari Qamish as well. It includes 16 villages. So many people were killed there, especially in the year 19 and 1,975 Muslims and Turks were killed in those areas. So we can say from the documents that we have that the Armenians did not only kill the military Ottoman army personnel, they also killed civilians, women, and children. So these are documented. And we can say in general that more than 500,000 Turkish and Muslim citizens were killed by the Armenian gangs through 15 years between 1905 and 1920. Thank you very much, Dr. Cengiz. We will come back to you in the second round. We have now Professor Ajib Darwish from Majid Darwish from Tripoli in Lebanon. Professor Majid also conducted valuable research in this regard. Let's start. Of course, he teaches in different universities in Lebanon. And as you know, things that were mentioned by Dr. Cengiz now, they were documented by the Americans themselves. And as you said, as you mentioned in your research, in 1919, the American Congress sent an American mission to investigate in this massacre. So what happened? What was what were the findings of this delegation? The Americans commissioned this mission, but now they say the opposite. Thank you very much. Peace be upon you all. I would like to thank Mr. Anwar for this opportunity that he gave to me to be amongst those great minds as panelists. And it is our destiny as Muslims in this age to confront an international campaign that aims at confiscating our right to be on the international map. As Dr. Anwar said, yes, the Americans, as well as the Europeans, the French, the Germans, the Russians, they all know who perpetrated these massacres. The Russians were the ones who created the Tashnak and the Hashnak Armenian gangs in 1886 and 1880, and they started with these with their military operations against the Turks in the Anatolia, and this is well known. And it is also known from the reports of the European councils who were speaking about the Armenians' crimes, grudge, and their methods of killing the children, women, the elderly, how they put them, gathered them in mosques and burnt the mosques with them inside the mosque, as Mr. Cengiz said. But they don't, they refute that now. Why? Yesterday, I listened to the speech of the American president, and he doesn't recognize that or to accuse anybody, but just not to repeat the crimes. So I thought that, wow, this man is really sarcastically, of course, how tender this person. He doesn't see what the Jews are doing in Palestine since 1948, and he doesn't see what the American soldiers did in Iraq. We have about 500,000 Iraqis between dismissed, forcibly displaced, or forcibly missing a person. And right now, Syria, Iraq, 200,000 were killed in Iraq, and right now 400,000 people were killed in Syria. All of that, Biden doesn't see it, and he doesn't see what his democracy and his troops do around the world, and he doesn't see what his troops did, for example, in Vietnam or in Korea. He only saw those allegations that are called the Armenian massacres. All of that is because of politics. Why politics? Because, as Mr. Anwar said, when it started to be announced that there were genocides against the Armenians, and this started by the Armenians themselves. At the end of the 19th century, there was a Berlin conference. The British and the Russians put pressure on Sultan Abdulhamid to recognize an independent state for the Armenians in the north of Anatolia. Of course, because he lost the war with Russia, and in that conference he was trying to get the best without so much losses. But he refused to give them the state they asked for, and since then the Russians started to create these criminal gangs, and they were trained in Iran. Russia provided them with weapons, and Iran provided them the land to train, and they were waging attacks on the north of Turkey. They tried also to assassinate Sultan Abdulhamid in 1905. It is very well known attempt to assassinate Sultan Abdulhamid, and several European consulates wrote about that. The German consul himself was close, and he wrote what he saw. In 1919, the American Congress sent a committee composed of two officers. One of the officers is called Emory Niles, and the second is Arthur Sutherland. They came to the north, to the Anatolia, to the north of Turkey, to prove the Turkish crimes. That was the aim of the mission. After they saw firsthand the report they made says the following. At first glance, we didn't want to believe the testimonies we heard about the Turks, that the Armenians made such horrible crimes. We didn't want to believe them, but at the end of the day, we believe them because the testimonies were well documented with evidence. Is the only neighborhoods that remained in Metlis and one were the Armenian neighborhoods, and that was shown by the churches that survived, and all the slogans that we saw on the walls, whereas the Muslim neighborhoods completely destroyed. Of course, this is written in their report. The villages of the Muslims were sinking in darkness, and they provided figures about the condition of houses before the World War I and after World War I. For example, in Iwan, the number of houses before the war were 3,400 houses. Iwan, of course, the city of Badi' al-Zaman al-Nawrasi, may he rest in peace. So there were 300,400 houses of the Muslims. After the war, only 3 houses remained. All the houses in Iran were demolished and destroyed. The Armenians in Iran had 3,000 houses. After the war, had 1,100 houses. Of course, these are the figures of the Congress Commission. In Bitlis, the houses of the Muslims were 6,500 houses. After the war, not a single house survived. Whereas the Armenians had 1,500 houses, after the war had 1,000 houses, only 500 were destroyed. The villages of Iwan province, the houses of the Muslims account for 1,377 houses. After the war, only 350 houses survived. The Armenians had 112 houses. After the war, they became 300 houses, so they increased. In another province before the war, the houses of the Muslims were 444. After the war, 222. The Armenians had 33 houses. After the war, 33 houses remained for them. So they know that, the Americans know that what they are saying is lying. But what is the problem? I will tell you what is the problem. In 1923, when the Turkish Republic were declared, and allow me to be frank, the governments that came one after another were in line or inclined with the policy of the foreign countries. So they don't have any problem with that. And there is a lot of American researchers, including John Arthur McCarthy and Bernard Lewis, the new theorist of the New Middle East. And in addition to the American, Russian, British, and the French archives, they found that there were no Armenian genocide, but they were put under pressure, so they had to keep silent. And only John McCarthy said that wrote two books and continued writing about that issue. Right now, the situation in Turkey is different. So the government that we have today is not similar to the difference in 1923. Today, Turkey is a hard figure in the coming formula, and everybody knows that the entire world needs Turkey. In terms of the geopolitical position of Turkey. So, and Turkey was able to get away from the Western dominance. So when they started to feel that threat, they started to practice political blackmailing. What Biden said is a cheap political blackmailing, and it will not have any impact. Let me say something to you. They use the logic of force. They feel that they are strong and they can do whatever they want. One of our teachers was from Al Azhar, Muhammad Daftar, and he once gave us a story showing us how the strong people speak in a strong logic and that weak people use weak logic. He said that there was a tribe before Islam that was strong, and he was asked, "What is justice for you?" He said, "Justice is to attack my neighbor and take his sheep." And he said, "What is injustice then in your eyes?" He said, "Injustice is when my neighbor comes to ask for his sheep." So that is the logic that they use. They want to reshape the region again. When the loots of the region was distributed amongst the major powers after the Ottoman Empire lost the war, World War One, and the lands of the Ottoman Empire were occupied or colonized by the alliance. Of course, the Middle East was distributed amongst UK and France, and that's what Bernard Lewis said. Because today we don't have no France or UK as major powers, and Bernard Lewis said that today the area should be redistributed again, and that's what they are doing. So we need to learn from history. When the colonizers or the colonization occupied our lands, they occupied one state and they put a map to divide us, and we fought and sacrificed, and we became 22 states instead of one. So we actually implemented that map with our own blood. And right now it seems that we are not learning from history, and we are continuing this, and we see these wars that are called the Arab Spring. and we are killing our people, displacing our people to implement what they want. Turkey was aware of this issue, and because Turkey wants to fail their plans, they want to blackmail Turkey. History knows that what the Armenians are saying is lies, is lying. In 1919, when there was a court that was made when an Armenian killed Talat Pasha in Germany, and they brought falsified documents, and the judge at the time said these are falsified documents, and they were dismissed at the court. Because these documents were written at a time that they don't know how the correspondences are written, so they were very clear that they were falsified. Thank you very much. We will come back to you. Dr. Wathaq, I would like to ask you about the book that you have written, Documents and Facts. This book was translated to Turkish. Sorry, Dr. Majid. Yes, it was translated to Turkish, but unfortunately, it was not published. I heard that it was translated in the Fatah University. Yes, it was translated and authenticated translation, but it was not published yet. We have another researcher, Dr. Wathiq Al-Sadoun. Welcome, Dr. Wathiq. Thank you. Thank you. In your opinion, what are the Armenian motives to incite or raise this issue every now and then? Why the United States is today looking at this, and the American president says that what happened at that time was a genocide? Thank you very much. In the name of God, I would like to thank you, Dr. Anwar, and all of the colleagues and all the audience. I would like to say that from a humanitarian point of view, killing a single innocent person is a crime, and it is a denounced crime, regardless of their ethnicity or religion, which means all the innocent people who died or were killed in those events, whether they are Armenians, Turks, Kurds, or from any other religion or faith, we pay respect to them, and their sacrifices are respected, and their blood is respected. But when we study studying the facts that happen, this is a humankind effort to learn lessons from the past, and we learn from that. But we need to know that this research should be objective, independent, and unbiased. When there is any bias of the research, it becomes useless, and it's not a historic research, but rather a falsification of history and a falsification of facts. On the other hand, as Professor Christopher Dean has said, he is an American historian, said that practicing pressures through governments did not lead to any positive results, as we see now, and even in the past years, not only now. The Armenian lobbies try through Western governments or Western parliaments to gain support about the Armenian genocide. So this professor says that the government's role is not to provide such support. The history is the field of historians, and not the congresses or parliaments. Professor Edward Erickson, he is a military American historian and researcher. He works in several think tanks, and he has focus on the Ottoman Empire and the modern Middle East history. He wrote about 15 books about at the end of the Ottoman area and the beginning of the republic. He has a book, the Ottomans and the Armenians, a study about the beginning of the rebellion. Look at the title he used, the combating the rebellion. That is the military description within the context about what happened in that area. That was an armed rebellion. Professor Erickson, in that book, describes the events from 1878 until 1915. He said in his book, or he concluded in his book, that the deportation of the Armenians in some areas of the Ottoman territories was because having a campaign that was designed by the Ottoman authorities to fight the rebellion and to protect the Ottoman lands, which means the deportation of the Armenians from the flashpoints were for security necessities and not for ideological reasons. So when Erickson says in this book that the campaigns were in the entire region, so there were deportation or changing of this place of residence in these areas, not only for the Armenians, but for security necessities. So the Ottomans deported some sects from certain areas, which are the flashpoints. As Erickson said, there were no already made decisions by the Ottoman rulers to make massacres or to perpetrate massacres against the Armenians. He says that there is no place in the world that supports the idea that the Ottoman authority made orders to deport the Armenians for ideological or political reasons, which means they were not deported only for being Armenians, but they were deported for being in the flashpoints. Erickson says that the Ottoman authorities exerted a genuine effort to protect the Armenians from the events that were taking place. And the Russians archives says that in 1917, most of the Armenians left the Ottoman army and joined the Russian army. And some of them were guides for the Russians, and they provided the services to the Russian army. There are also well-known Armenian figures like Karakan Bastarmajian. He was one member of the parliament representing Erzurum. He joined the Russians as well. And those Armenian factions perpetrated crimes in several Muslim villages, as the colleagues before me mentioned. Erickson says that even the Armenians that were deported or evicted from Musa's Mount in Hatay to Bor Said in Egypt, after the end of World War I, they came back to their cities in Turkey safely, especially those who were in Mount Musa's in Hatay province. Another academic comment on Erickson's book, and it is Professor Douglas in the United. He teaches in the Marines University, and he has an important book. It's called the TNT Ottoman countries, the documents of the or the tensions between the Ottomans and the Armenians. Douglas says about Erickson's book the readers of the history of
التحليل النزيه أو لديهم اهتمام جاد
people
بتاريخ
who
الحروب.
don't want to have a just and unbiased reading, they should not read this book. But people who want to know the facts and an unbiased reading, they should read this book. So this is the core of this issue, and the main reason of raising this issue every now and again is to smear the Ottoman history to prevent any relation between the Ottoman Empire and the Arabs. This is the core problem. When it comes to the Armenian groups that are lobbying for that, they have goals, long-term goals and short-term goals. The long-term goals, of course, is to get financial compensation from Turkey, and they are looking for a financial benefit. The short-term benefit is through the announcement of Biden's announcement is to cover for the loss in Karabakh. So many Armenians are living in the United States, and they are lobbying for that. So these are the factors that make them raise this issue every now and again. Thank you very much for all of your contributions. Once again, I will be back to Mr. Ahmed Sharqawi. But I would like to remind you that we only have 20 minutes for, so each speaker will have only 5 minutes. So let's try to finish or conclude in 5 minutes. Mr. Sharqawi, what happened during the days of the deportation? So for those who call them a genocide, they mean the deportation or the displacement. So what happened in that period? If you may brief us about that in 5 minutes. So do you want me to summarize this book that is over 400 books, 400 pages, and it has about 200 documents about deportation? You want me to summarize it in 5 minutes? We will have other sessions, inshallah. God willing. Okay. In the 5 minutes, I will try, I will use only 3 minutes of the 5 minutes. What can we make of this session? We always say that the United States is attacking or aggressive. Why? The Turks are not attacking, and they are silent. They say we want to send us make an international committee to investigate the issue. Why don't you make this committee? Are you waiting for an American committee to investigate the archives? You can make that from the academics. Open your archives and the archives of other countries that were ruled by the Ottoman Empire and show the entire world the facts. Even if the Armenians didn't win from this propaganda, they won billions of dollars from the movies that are made for them. There are 5 or 6 Armenian international movie production companies that are producing movies about them, in addition to the empathy. And even here in the Arab world, and you can ask Wathiq, Mr. Dr. Wathiq and Dr. Majid, most people in the Arab world believe the Armenian lies, even the prudent researchers. Why? Because when they want to look into this issue, they found Armenian books that are provided sometimes for free by Armenian research centers. So they take those books for free. But to go to Istanbul and look at the archives, this is very difficult. So this is something that the Turks can serve their cause. The silence for 100 years gave this strength for the Armenians and the Americans to keep using this topic. The silence for 100 years make all of these lies become became facts. And even when we defend this issue, some people say you are affiliated with this group or that group, you are lying and you are not telling the truth. Now I'm talking about, I'm talking to two important figures, you, Dr. Anwar, and Mr. Ahmed Oysel. You are heading two strong think tanks in Turkey. So the books that are written by the Turks should be translated into different languages, especially Arabic, because in the Arab region is the a strategic supporter for Turkey, and it can create an global public opinion supportive for this issue. But when this issue is uh, spoken about for 2 years in April, and every time we speak about that, and we forget about that. And right now, it took 4 days because the announcement was made by the United States, not by any someone else. So you have the facts, but when you keep silent, you give the space for all of the lies to fill the space instead of the facts that you have. So we need to start working to uh, foil the efforts by the Armenians for 100 years to impose their lies. And I believe the effort will not be so difficult to shut up all the lying voices, especially the United States and the Armenians, about this issue. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I agree with you 100%. And Dr. Ahmed Oysel, the head of the center, is with us and he is listening to you. So I hope with his guidance, we may do at least part of this effort. So you're right. But right, we made some reactions right now, and it is not enough. We have also Dr. Cengiz, and he is a good political analyst in Turkey, and he conducts a lot of interviews on TVs and in several researches. And he is a dean of an international university, and he is a member of the education staff in Marmara University in Istanbul. So let's see what response does he have. What do you think about what Dr. Ahmad Sharqawi said? And let's say that the Ottoman archive is open, but the Armenian supporters don't want to look into that archives because they have political agenda. So what do you say about that? Dear Dr. Sharqawi, I like you so much, and you have a great weight in this field. You're right. We mentioned these issues on the 23rd of April, and 2 days later, we stopped talking about that. You're right. We have the archives, we have the capabilities, we know the old Ottoman old language, but until today, I don't think that there is a center for Armenian studies. I don't know if I'm wrong, please correct me. So if you have a problem, you need to find a solution for that. We as Muslims, we say the knowledge has the highest rank of all ranks. So we have all of the evidence, but we don't give attention to scholars or to knowledge. And this is our situation in the entire Islamic world, unfortunately. It is true that if we write all of these issues, they won't believe us. But even our Arab brothers, as Sharqawi said, they read these lies in Arabic. For example, in this program, Do we have any specialist on Armenian issues who can speak in Arabic? No. I am not a specialist
مؤرخ
on the
بشكل عام
Armenian issue. I am a historian about the Middle East in general, but we don't have a single a specialist on the Armenian issue who can write in Arabic or speak in Arabic. So for 100 years, we are talking about these issues, but what effort have we made about that?
هي
The
أولا
books, for example, are not in Turkish. They are in Arabic. Sorry, in Turkish. Sorry, in English, and we even need because it is the important language, and we need also to support researchers, Arab researchers, because maybe they write better than the Turks. Because when a Turkish person writes, the Westerners will say this is the Turkish propaganda. But if Dr. Sharqawi writes in Arabic, Dr. Justin McCarthy or Eric from the United States, that will be better because. But why don't government support people like Dr. Sharqawi to come to Istanbul to look at the documents and he might pay from his own pocket for these topics. So this will be very costly for him. So I thank Dr. Sharqawi for these points he made. Do we have time to answer the question? You have 1 or 2 minutes. Scientifically speaking, there are no evidence. I'm speaking scientifically, not in terms of propaganda or the falsified evidence. If they have evidence, of course, it's been 100 years, so they could have done a lot of things. Until now, so many of the mass graves are still present. We found in Turkey for uh, the ones that where the Armenians, where the Muslims and Turks were killed. As for the Armenians, they couldn't find one mass grave where the Armenians were killed. Why? This is a question that should be asked. So they claim that 1 million and 1.5 million Armenians were killed at the time. Where are their mass graves? As we found in Srebrenica, for example, or in Germany or Austria. Even in Anatolia, all the graves were found for Muslims, not for Armenians. Yes, that's right. So why they don't see that? Why don't we see that? So this is the first evidence. And if they have scientific evidence, why don't they go to international courts? They can do that for like what they did to Milosevic and Madovic in terms of the Hague and the ICC, for example. So if they have scientific evidence, they can go to those courts. So this is a propaganda. They have Hollywood, they have the movies or the series, but for us, even in Turkey, although it has good production in movies and series, I didn't see, even as a Turkish person, I didn't see a Turkish movie which speaks about these issues. Although Turkey has good production of movies and series. So it's not only
بالاشياء البروباغندا هناك
we have shortcoming in the propaganda tools as well, not only in the scientific field. And for example, there is the history department. There should be centers specialized on the Armenian issue. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope that what you and Mr. Sharqawi said will be materialized one day. And Mr. Sharqawi said that there should be a joint committee, not only by Turks, but from countries with specialists from different countries. And I believe this can be a good idea. And maybe in the future, this can be achieved, inshallah, or God willing. Dr. Majid Darwish, I know that in your research you have a lot of things about the falsified documents that Mr. Sharqawi spoke about. So, what would you like to add about this topic on the falsified documents that were provided by the Armenians? We have those falsified and the alleged numbers that were killed. They say that 1.5 million Armenians were killed. We know the every year there is a census about the population of the Ottoman population. From the documents that we have collected, we know that the citizens of the Ottoman Empire until 1916, after the events of 1915, they were, let's say in 1915, they were 1.3 million Armenians. If 1.6 millions in 2016, 1.5 were killed of them, how will in 1916 or that figure of them will remain alive? So this is a lie. Twimby mentioned in his, or according to Twimby, in the British Encyclopedia in 1918, it mentioned that 600,000 Armenians were killed. When it was reprinted in 1960, the number became 1.5. So they are all lies. There is Andorian, or I don't know the actual name of that person, and that when he said that when a Limby gets into Aleppo and he found the documents at an Ottoman police officer, it was proven that these documents are all falsified because the language used is not the language that were used in correspondences, and the numbers or the codes that were used are not in line with the codes that were used by the Ottoman army, especially that the Ottoman army at that time, they had orders to change the secret code, whereas those documents for 4, 5, 6 months remained the same. So all of that shows that these documents were falsified. So the result was that a number of Armenians in France tried to make a case out of this falsification, and they failed to do that. I agree with my colleagues, Sharqawi, that we need, and Mr. Genghis, we need a center for Armenian studies where all people from different languages join that. For example, I have a book now that was written in English and translated into Turkish. It was written by the first Armenian Prime Minister, Kachazanian. Ovanios Kachazanoni. And I translated it into Arabic and it's not published yet. I read it in English. It is published in English and Turkish. This book he sent a document to the document that was to the conference that was conducted in 1920 by the Toshnak a group, and he said that what was conducted by the all these allegations are lies, and the crimes were perpetrated by the Armenians, not by the Turks. Such a book should be translated into all languages, and it should be distributed to be seen. And it was published in Georgia. It was printed in Georgia, actually. So we need to make seminars about this issue for all the world to know that these are lies, and what is happening is political blackmailing, because those who are opening this issue, they want other things. They want to blackmail Turkey, and they want to make wider strife between the Arabs, Arab Muslims and the Turk Muslims after the Arab Revolution, which was a stab in the back of the Ottoman Empire. But I think the future will be brighter than this. Thank you very much, Dr. Majid. Thank you all. And finally, I will give the floor to Dr. Wathiq. In your opinion, what are the political reasons behind Biden's announcement about of what the so-called Armenian mass genocide? You know, before each election campaign in the United States, each candidate gives promises to their people based on, and they shows the showing promises to the different ethnicities and people that support them. The Armenians have lobbies in the United States, and Biden, just like any presidency candidate, and he gave promises to the Armenians to recognize the so-called the Armenian genocide. In general, the presidential promises, if the president didn't win, we have two kinds of promises. There are things that has to do with internal issues, and there are promises that has to do with regional or international issues. In terms of this case in specific, Biden promised the Armenian electorate, and after he won and got into the White House, he wanted to show the voters that this person is that he's keeping the promise. The declaration by Biden right now, it is for the voters, the Armenian voters in the United States, but it has also an international aspect about the relation between the United States and Turkey. This relation is very important for the United States, and any the president in the United States did not take that lightly. It was always important. Turkey was important for them, for the United States of America. That's why this announcement, let's say it is a propaganda, and the American policy will not give much attention to this declaration, because the nature of American administrations in terms of issues that are related to the Middle East or any other area are not related to the promises made by the president in his campaign, but rather with the developments in the region and the political aspects in the region that makes the president act in a certain way in the foreign policy. So I believe the political changes in the region impose upon the American administration more understanding with Turkey to diffuse the situation with Turkey. So I believe this will not be of much importance as I see it. Thank you very much. The major message of Turkey in this field, we leave things for history to judge upon them, because this should be the field of historians to explore that issue. We tried in this session to allow historians talk about that. And thank you very much for your contributions. And I hope that this session will not be once only session. We hope that in the future we will continue with these efforts, and we will try to look at this issue with other historians and academics. Thank you very much, everyone, for contributing to this session. And I hope to meet again in the future in other events. Thank you very much, and peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And I would like to thank the audience as well who are watching us on YouTube. Thank you and good night. Wa alaikum salam.